Hi guys, welcome to the grim darkness of Warhammer40k, where even gods can't escape suffering. Today we dive into the eternal suffering of the Emperor, a god who cannot die. The tragic story of a god trapped between life and death for all eternity. Silence, a silence so vast that even the concept of sound seems like a forgotten myth. It drifts through the golden chamber like ancient dust, untouched for 10,000 years. The air trembles with a low hum, the slow mechanical heartbeat of the golden throne. There, upon that throne of living metal and dying flesh, rests the Emperor of mankind. Not alive, not dead. Suspended in a state that mocks both definitions, his body is a cathedral of agony, a monument to suffering sanctified by time. The skin that once shone with the light of a god is now a landscape of ruin. Where there was once flesh, there are now conduits, tubes, and sacred filaments that crawl through him like veins of iron. They pierce through his bones, anchor into his marrow, and drink from his dying essence as if the machine itself hungers for his divinity. The Mechanicus calls it maintenance, but in truth it is feeding. Every wire is a mouth, every cog a parasite. The throne devours the Emperor slowly, patiently, as if eternity itself were savoring the meal. And yet, within the ruins of his body, thought still burns. A flicker of consciousness, dim but unyielding, persists beyond the decay. He knows. He feels the weight of each passing second, the slow erosion of self under an endless tide of machine prayers and incense smoke. Once, he commanded armies that spanned galaxies. His words could ignite crusades and silence worlds. Now he cannot move even a single finger. The Golden Throne is his tomb, and his pulpit. His voice no longer echoes through the Imperium, but his silence does. It has become law. The chamber is vast, filled with the ceaseless murmuring of servo skulls, incense droning through vents, and the clicking of sacred machinery performing its ancient rites. The air smells of oil, blood, and devotion, the scent of an empire built upon the corpse of its god. Millions of pilgrims kneel on distant catwalks, their chants rising through the filtered air. Ave Imperator, Ave Deus in Machina. They pray to a being they believe to be divine, never knowing that their God is aware of every word, every desperate whisper, every act of blind faith, and that he weeps within his golden cage. For what is divinity, if not the endless endurance of pain? What is immortality, if not the denial of release? Inside the endless labyrinth of his mind, memories stir. Memories of the Great Crusade, of the laughter of sons now lost, of dreams once bright as newborn stars. But each recollection is followed by an echo of decay, a reminder that every ideal he built has rotted into dogma. The Emperor does not sleep. He cannot. His mind stretches across the void, touching the Astronomicon, burning like a beacon through the madness of the warp. A billion souls navigate by his light, never realizing that this brilliance is sustained by torment. He endures, not out of hope but necessity, not for glory but for the survival of a species that has long forgotten his truth. In this chamber of gold and silence, time no longer flows. It pools, it congeals around him thick as blood. Every moment is a mirror of the last, a loop of agony sanctified by ritual. And somewhere deep within, beneath the static hum of dying neurons and the echo of ancient prayers, a thought lingers. Fragile and forbidden, let me rest. But the throne answers with only the hiss of oxygen and the pulse of divine machinery. There is no mercy here. There is no end, only the eternal suffering of a god who cannot die. It begins as a whisper, not one voice but millions. An ocean of thoughts breaking upon the fractured shores of his mind. They rise and fall in unison, the cries of psychers being drained into oblivion to sustain his dying flame. Each voice flickers for a heartbeat, then vanishes into the abyss, leaving behind only the echo of pain. The Emperor hears them all. He always has. Every 24 hours across the endless span of the Imperium, thousands of psychers are chosen, chained, branded, their eyes sealed with holy wax. They are herded into sanctified halls beneath Terra, where the priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus perform the ancient rite of feeding the throne. The air there is thick with the smell of ozone, sanctified oil, and burning flesh. As the rite begins, the adepts chant in binary hymns, "By the flesh we sustain the divine circuit, by the soul we feed the throne." The words are mechanical, yet beneath them trembles a note of fear. Fear of what would happen should the ritual ever cease. When the first psyker screams, their life force is torn from them, devoured by the warp machinery. That energy, raw, luminous, agonized, surges upward through conduits and sacred filters until it reaches the golden throne. There, it becomes the fuel that keeps the Emperor's light burning. He feels each death, every moment of terror before the end, every desperate plea for mercy that will never come. Their pain crashes against his consciousness like waves upon a broken shore, ceaseless, merciless, infinite. But somewhere amid the cacophony, there is a pattern, a rhythm within the madness. It calls to him. Continue. The word is not spoken nor imagined. It simply is. A command woven into the very fabric of his existence. It does not come from the Mechanicus, nor from the ecclesiarchy, nor from any mortal will. It emanates from something greater, something older. The momentum of duty itself, the collective weight of human faith and fear made manifest. Continue. The command reverberates through the dying corridors of his mind. It is both law and curse, the reason he endures when all reason should demand oblivion. It drives his decaying neurons to fire, his broken soul to pulse with the dying heartbeat of mankind's hope. He wishes, if such a word still has meaning, that he could disobey, that he could let go. But to stop would be to condemn every world, every city, every lost child praying beneath the blackened skies of the Imperium. The Astronomicon would die, the warp would swallow the void, and the human race, his race, would vanish like a spark in the storm. And so he obeys. The adepts outside cannot hear the voice, but they feel its presence. It manifests as a pressure behind their eyes, as blood running from their noses, as an instinctive compulsion to continue the rites. Even when the generators falter, even when the conduits groan, they never stop. For to stop is blasphemy. To stop is extinction. Each soul fed to the throne adds another note to the endless choir screaming inside his skull. Their agony is his nourishment, their terror his sustenance. They pray to the Emperor even as they die for him, never realizing he stands beside them in that final moment, witnessing their unraveling, powerless to silence their cries. Sometimes, amid the torrent of thoughts, he thinks he can discern individual words. A name, a plea, a fragment of an old song once sung by mankind before the age of strife. But then the next wave comes, and everything is drowned again. And always beneath it all, that voice, calm, absolute, unrelenting. Continue. He wonders if it is the voice of the throne itself, or the warp mocking him, or perhaps his own mind looping infinitely upon the only command it has left to obey. It no longer matters. The distinction between divinity and machine has long since dissolved. The priests outside call it the Omnissiah's will. The Inquisition calls it the eternal duty. The people simply call it faith. But he knows the truth. The command is a prison, forged from the prayers of trillions. Their worship binds him as tightly as any chain. Their belief sustains not his life, but his torment. Somewhere in the depths of his decaying consciousness, he tries to form a word, a protest, a denial, anything. But what emerges instead is a silent acceptance, ancient and weary. So be it. The energy of 1,000 psychers floods his veins once more. The throne hums, the Astronomicon blazes brighter, and across the stars, ships find their way through the madness of the warp. The Imperium survives another day, and the Emperor continues, not because he chooses to, but because the universe itself refuses to let him die. Somewhere within the endless storm of thought, Beneath the static hum of dying neurons and the cold pulse of the golden throne, a question stirs. A question forbidden. A question older than hope itself. Is this salvation or punishment? The thought moves through his mind like a ripple across a stagnant sea. For a moment, the mechanical chanting of the priests fades. The screams of dying psychers fall silent, and all that remains is the hollow resonance of that question echoing within him. Once, he had believed in purpose, in the strength of will, in the perfection of reason. He had shaped the destiny of humanity with hands that could tear worlds apart and mend them again. He had walked among gods and denied them all, declaring himself the master of his own design. But now, he cannot even lift his gaze. The tubes that pierce his flesh tremble faintly, feeding the machine with the faint glow of stolen souls. The light from the throne dances across his desiccated face, catching on metal implants that glisten where bone once was. 1,000 sensors read the decaying rhythms of his existence, translating pain into data, agony into power. And through it all he wonders, where does the man end and the machine begin? The thought is heretical even within his own mind, yet there is no one left to silence him. The priests worship the shell. The Imperium worships the myth. But who now remembers the man who had a name before the word emperor devoured it? He tries to recall his face, not the golden mask immortalized in statues and banners, but the human face that once smiled, that once wept, that once believed he could lead mankind to the stars without chains or superstition. The memory slips away. The machine does not allow it. There is a hum, deep and rhythmic, echoing from the throne. It is not alive, yet it breathes. Each pulse of sacred energy drags him further from what he once was. Every ritual repair, every neural calibration, erases another fragment of humanity from his essence. He realizes, with something like horror, that the priests no longer see him as a being to be preserved, but as a system to be maintained. They no longer serve the Emperor. They service him, and what does that make him, if not a machine? Once his will had guided the species across the stars. Now that will is trapped inside a decaying vessel of circuitry and divine machinery. A consciousness spread thin, stretched over millennia, forced to burn in perpetual awareness. He feels the flickering minds of his children, the Primarchs, scattered across memory. Some are dead, others damned. A few vanished into the void. He remembers their faces, their laughter, their betrayals. For a fleeting instant, he dares to think that perhaps their rebellion was not madness, but instinct. They sought freedom, he thinks, and I sought control. The words feel foreign, dangerous. He almost recoils from them, as if thinking them might tear the Imperium itself apart. Yet even in his paralysis, he senses their truth bleeding through the walls of denial. Perhaps this throne, this immortal imprisonment, was not the price of victory. Perhaps it was justice. He sees visions through the warp, worlds burning in his name, billions slaughtered to preserve his faith, inquisitors torturing in his image. All of it done for the Emperor of mankind. For him, but he never commanded this. He never built a church from the bones of reason. He never wanted divinity. He had sought enlightenment, not worship. Unity, not fear. And yet that is all that remains. The realization cuts deeper than any blade ever could. Within the sanctum of his mind, something begins to fracture. Not a scream, not an outburst, but a subtle unraveling, like the quiet sigh of a dying god. He feels the shape of his doubt spreading, a contagion in a place where only certainty once reigned. If he were mortal, he would weep. If he were divine, he would forgive. But he is neither. He is the space between. A consciousness suspended in golden machinery, aware of its own decay, aware of the empire that has twisted his dream into nightmare, and powerless to change it. The warp hums softly around him, a mockery of prayer. Within its whispers, he hears faint laughter, the laughter of those same chaos gods he once sought to deny. They do not need to defeat him. They only need him to endure, and he does. He endures the worship that suffocates, the obedience that blinds, the eternity that dehumanizes. Am I still the Emperor? He wonders. Or am I simply the throne itself, a machine dreaming it was once a man? There is no answer. There never will be. Only the quiet, eternal hum of the mechanism. and the steady, unbroken light of the Astronomicon, a light born from the torment of a god who no longer knows what he is. At first, it feels like falling, a slow, silent plunge into a chasm without end, where even time dares not follow. Thought unravels, memory bleeds, and the Emperor, the last light of mankind, that begins to drift beyond the veil of reality. He does not mean to go. He cannot choose to go. The descent happens as all tragedies do, without warning, without consent. In the fractured labyrinth of his mind, the boundaries between waking and eternity begin to crumble. The throne hums louder now, its divine machinery screaming in protest as his awareness slips through the cracks of flesh and metal. Energy flickers, alarms wail in distant chambers, but no priest of the Mechanicus understands what is truly occurring. They kneel, they pray, they offer incense, never realizing that their god is no longer within their reach. He is falling into the warp. Not the warp as mortals imagine it, not a simple ocean of chaos or flame, but the truth of it, vast and formless, a realm older than creation, woven from the emotions of all living things. It is hatred given shape, madness given purpose, despair given voice. It is a mirror reflecting the collective soul of the galaxy, and now it reflects him. As he sinks deeper, he feels the pull, not of gravity but of hunger. The warp remembers him. It remembers the taste of his will, the burn of his defiance, the blinding light that once forced its horrors to retreat into the dark. Now that light is dim. Now it reaches back. They come slowly at first, silhouettes of things that were never meant to be seen. Whispers in the language of pain coil around his fading thoughts. Forms without form emerge from the shifting tides. Creatures born from the screams of dying civilizations, each one familiar in its blasphemy. He returns, one hisses. The golden flame, guttering at last. Come, dying god, come and see what your silence has birthed. Their laughter spreads like fire through the ether, a symphony of mockery and hunger. He recognizes them, the four who rule the madness: Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, Slaanesh. The eternal predators of human emotion. Each one had grown fat on the despair of his Imperium, feeding upon the endless war he could no longer prevent. They had waited for this moment, this weakness, this trembling lapse of control. He tries to rise, to assert his dominion, to bring order where only ruin reigns, but he cannot. His will no longer thunders like it once did. The light that once burned galaxies clean now flickers like a dying candle, and the warp, sensing weakness, presses closer. He feels them brushing against his consciousness, not in flesh, for flesh has no meaning here, but in essence. Their presence is suffocating. Khorne, a storm of iron and blood, snarling in joy at the endless slaughter wrought in his name. Tzeentch, the ever-shifting labyrinth whispering that all order was but another form of chaos. Nurgle, the bloated comfort of decay, promising rest within the filth of surrender. And Slaanesh, sweet, venomous, radiant, singing softly of pleasure disguised as peace. They encircle him, these eternal reflections of human vice, and he sees the truth he once denied. They are born of us, born of the same humanity he sought to save. Their power is the shadow of his dream. This is your Imperium, they seem to say. This is your gift to creation, and he cannot deny it. All across the galaxy, men kill and die in his name. Planets burn in worship, and innocents are sacrificed to preserve the illusion of his divine will. The warp feeds on every prayer, every act of devotion, every drop of blood spilled in faith, until his empire has become the perfect engine of its own damnation. You kept them from us once, whispers Tzeentch, his voice 1,000 shifting tongues. But now they are ours, and you are one of us. He does not answer. He cannot, because some part of him, some weary, ancient part, believes it. The warp presses closer still, its form solidifying around him. The sea becomes a storm, colors colliding in impossible geometries. Sound takes on weight, light bleeds like a living thing. And through it all, he feels the pull of 10 billion souls, and the faithful, the damned, the lost, all reaching for him, all calling his name. Emperor, save us. Emperor, forgive us. Emperor, deliver us. Their voices become chains, They bind him, drag him downward deeper into the nightmare. Every prayer that once gave him strength now becomes a weight, anchoring him to his failure. He sees flashes of mortal life, soldiers dying on nameless worlds, priests screaming his name in ecstasy and terror, children starving beneath banners of gold. All of it is the Imperium. All of it is him. The gods laugh again. They do not need to strike. They only need to welcome. And so, as he sinks into the depths, the Emperor understands the final cruelty of his fate. The warp does not consume him with rage. It embraces him, tenderly, almost lovingly, as one of its own. He who fought to master it. He who gave his flesh to cage it. He who burned his soul to protect humanity from its touch. Now, it cradles him like a child returning home. And somewhere, far above Terra, the Astronomicon flickers just once, before stabilizing again. Its steady light fueled by a god who has begun to dream in the language of monsters. The warp sighs around him, the gods whisper, and the Emperor falls endlessly into the hell he once called by another name. There is no up, no down, no direction, only motion without meaning. The Emperor drifts through the warp like a dying star, his consciousness unraveling across an ocean of madness. Around him the storm howls. Colors that have no name scream into existence, burn and dissolve again in the same instant. Sound becomes light, thought becomes pain. Every sense collapses into a single endless vibration of being. This is not a place. It is the reflection of all places, a mirror held up to the soul of creation. The raw, undiluted madness of existence itself. The warp shifts. It breathes. It hungers. The air, if such a word still applies, is thick with screams. Not the sharp human sound of terror, but something deeper. The psychic wail of 10 billion minds breaking in unison. Each cry lingers in the ether, looping eternally, becoming part of the very texture of this reality. They echo like songs of agony, drifting through the formless dark, twisting into shapes that pulse with hatred and despair. The Emperor recognizes them. These are his people, his children. They were the faithful, the devout, the loyal, the ones who died whispering his name with their final breath. Their souls were consumed by the warp upon death, caught in the current between light and nothingness. Now they orbit him like a constellation of suffering, glowing faintly in the madness, their devotion frozen into something grotesque and eternal. He saved us. One voice sighs, though it no longer knows the meaning of words. He will come again, croaks another, its tone half prayer, half delirium. Their forms twist as they speak, faces melting, bodies turning inside out, shapes blooming like sickly flowers made of light and memory. They swarm around him in adoration and terror, unable to tell the difference between the two. Their worship burns hotter than any star, yet in this place, it becomes poison, fuel for the storm that devours them. Every fragment of faith, every drop of belief, feeds the warp. It drinks their conviction and births new horrors from it. Reflections of their zeal, their fear, their longing for salvation. Some take the shape of winged saints with hollow eyes. Others are nothing but mouths, eternally screaming praise. They collide and merge and burst apart, forming rivers of radiant agony that spiral endlessly toward him. He can feel their touch upon his essence. They reach for him, clutching, desperate to be near the one they believe still watches over them. Their love sears like acid. Their prayers burn through his being like molten glass. For them, this is heaven. For him, it is damnation. The warp responds to his presence. The entire realm shifts around him, folding inward like a living wound. The storm's color changes, red bleeding into violet, gold bleeding into black, as if reality itself bows before the remnant of his divinity. And in that bowing, it mocks him. He senses shapes watching from the periphery, titanic silhouettes made of shadow and thought. Their eyes are suns that never close. They have been waiting for this moment since time began. He walks the sea of souls, murmurs a voice that ripples through the void. Once he ruled it by his will. Now it rules him by his endurance. He cannot deny it. The warp bends and reshapes itself with each flicker of his thought. Mountains of emotion rise and collapse around him, made of rage and sorrow and memory. Each thought he tries to form is reflected back at him as landscape, jagged peaks of regret, Rivers of shame, cities built from the faces of the lost. The faithful continue to gather, their countless spirits orbiting him like debris around a dying sun. Some are drawn into the gravity of his essence and are burned away instantly, their identities dissolving into psychic ash. Others linger, circling endlessly, repeating the same words, the same hymns, the same broken fragments of worship. Holy Emperor, deliver us from darkness. We suffer as you suffer. In death we serve. He tries to speak to them, to silence their torment, to give them peace. But every word he utters becomes a commandment. Every pulse of his will shapes the warp further, birthing new layers of reality that trap them deeper. The more he tries to free them, the more firmly they are bound. This is the truth he cannot escape. Salvation, in the warp, is another form of imprisonment. Mercy is just another mask for suffering. And then, far off in the distance, though distance has no meaning here, he sees it. A doorway made of impossible light. It is not a gate in any physical sense, but a threshold of thought, shimmering between existence and oblivion. On the other side lies something he cannot name. Not heaven, not peace, but end. The warp recoils from it. The gods snarl. The souls wail. But he, for one eternal instant, reaches toward it. A trembling impulse, a yearning for silence. And the gate opens. The light that pours through is not gentle. It is raw, unfiltered truth, the kind that strips meaning from everything it touches. Within it, he sees flashes of all that he has built and all that has decayed, his Imperium rotting under banners of faith, his sons turned to monsters and martyrs, his people worshiping his corpse. He understands finally that there is no salvation here. The warp has no mercy. It is both heaven and hell, both womb and tomb. It feeds upon belief, and his existence is its greatest feast. The light recedes. The gate closes. The storm surges once more, and the Emperor, caught in the heart of it, drifts onward, surrounded by the souls of his followers, their hymns echoing endlessly into the void, a choir of madness praising the God who cannot save them. Each voice becomes another chain, each prayer another nail, and the warp sings in a song without melody, without end, as the dying god continues his journey into the realm he once commanded, and which now commands him. Through the storm, he begins to see them, not as they once were, radiant in power and purpose, but as fractured echoes drifting across the black sea of the warp. The sons of his making, the Primarchs drawn here as he descends, their broken essences pulled toward the gravity of his sorrow. They come to him as shadows of memory, scattered and luminous, wearing faces carved from guilt and flame. Each one burns with a light that is not light, a reflection of the purpose he once gave them, now twisted by betrayal, by faith, by madness. For a long moment he cannot speak. He can only watch as his children, his greatest creation, orbit him in ruin. The first voice he hears is a whisper, torn and hollow, carried by currents of despair. Father, it is Horus, or what remains of him. The once favored son drifts before him, encased in shifting armor made from his own failure. His face, once noble, now a mask of infinite regret, flickers between beauty and decay. Each time his mouth opens, light spills out instead of words. I thought I could save us, the echo murmurs, its tone neither defiant nor pleading, only exhausted. I thought I could end your tyranny. The Emperor's mind trembles beneath the weight of what he feels. Sorrow, yes, but also understanding. Horus had not been born evil. He had been born human, and humanity, he now realizes, is both the source of all hope and all destruction. Behind Horus, others appear, spectral, immense, each carrying their own burden. Sanguinius, the angelic sun draped in wings of torn light, his body riddled with unseen wounds that never heal. His eyes meet the Emperor's, eyes that still hold forgiveness, though they no longer know life. His lips move, forming a word that has no sound, but the meaning is clear. Father. Then comes Magnus the Red, his single eye aflame with the fire of forbidden knowledge. He is both monstrous and beautiful, his body shifting between man and god, between scholar and demon. His voice cuts through the storm like the tolling of a great bell. You saw what I would become, and you did nothing. The accusation is not angry. It is weary. He floats closer, his presence vast, his essence burning with sorrow and pride. You could have guided me, but you chose silence, and silence became prophecy. The Emperor cannot deny it. He had foreseen the tragedy, and yet he had allowed it, perhaps out of faith, perhaps out of pride. What is the difference when both lead to damnation? Others gather Perturabo, the architect of endless sieges, his soul bound in chains of his own making, whispering of fortresses that can never fall and never be escaped. Fulgrim, once radiant, now a creature of shimmering excess, laughing softly as he polishes a sword made from his own reflection. Mortarion, shrouded in plague and sorrow, his breath a cloud of decay, murmuring hymns of deliverance through rot. Lorgar, kneeling in the void, still praying to gods that no longer listen, his faith a wound that never closes. Conrad Kersey, trembling and beautiful in his insanity, his laughter echoing like broken glass. And Angron, the Red Angel, roaring with endless rage, his chains dragging behind him like the music of torment. They circle him like planets around a dying sun. Each one is a fragment of his design, a shard of his will made flesh and then turned against itself. Together, they are the mirror of his failure, a divine reflection cracked beyond repair. Even the loyal come. Rogel Dorn, silent and rigid, his face a mask of grief that no blade could pierce. Varys Manus, who still clutches his severed hands as relics of his own faith. Gilliman, luminous yet burdened, bearing the weight of empire upon shoulders that were never meant to carry gods. Leman Russ, wild, mournful, howls somewhere in the distance, lost between loyalty and doubt. And Vulcan, ever the enduring flame, weeping fire instead of tears. Each of them looks upon him, and in their gaze, he feels not accusation, but recognition, for they are not merely his sons. They are his reflections. Each flaw in them was born from him, magnified, multiplied, made flesh. His desire for unity became Horus's pride. His pursuit of knowledge became Magnus's damnation. His faith in discipline became Dorn's silence. His rejection of gods became Lorgar's devotion. His rage at imperfection became Angron's endless fury. They are the echoes of his humanity, cast out into the stars and doomed to return to him now. Hollow, broken, eternal. The warp trembles around them. Their gathering disturbs its balance. Their presence is an anomaly, a wound of divine origin. The gods of chaos watch from the shadows, amused. For even in death, these sons cannot escape their father's shadow. Horus speaks again, his voice softer this time. We all wanted to save them, in our own way. You with empire, I with rebellion. And look, nothing remains but worship. The Emperor wants to answer, to deny, to reach out and embrace the one he once loved above all others. But there are no words left that can bridge what eternity has torn apart. The distance between them is not measured in space, but in consequence. The angel Sanguinius bows his head. Magnus averts his gaze. Fulgrim smiles with something like pity. And the Emperor, surrounded by the echoes of his sons, finally understands the full gravity of his isolation. They are all he has left. They are all that remain of his dream. And each of them, every glorious ruined fragment, is proof that divinity was never meant to create life. He watches them fade again, their forms dissolving into mist, carried away by the currents of the warp. One by one, their voices are swallowed by the storm, leaving only silence and the faint memory of what could have been. When the last echo vanishes, the Emperor stands alone once more, surrounded by the ghosts of his own creation, and haunted by the unbearable truth that even gods can die. But their mistakes live forever.